This is 7 News with Angela Cox.
Good afternoon. First at 4, 3 cases have been identified in New South Wales, another 2 in Victoria, as huge numbers of people race south before the border shuts. First to the situation in New South Wales, Robert Avadia is following this story. Rob, alerts for people in Western Sydney.
Angela, yes, good afternoon. Specifically for where I am in Auburn, this is a testing queue behind me. We've seen this exact scene, cars snaking in and out of here all day ever since Kerry Chant made the proclamation that Auburn is among a cluster, not the scientific term of cluster, but a bunching of suburbs around here, including Lidcombe and Greystanes. The reason for that is 3 people who have been confirmed to have been COVID patients. 2 of them are members of the one household. The 3rd is a close contact of theirs. Fortunately, no new transmissions on the northern beaches, so that is certainly slowing down there. But testing, testing, testing is the message for anybody in the NOS so they can try to clamp down on the spread.
But we're really keen to make sure everybody in the Greystanes, Barella, Auburn and Lidcombe areas comes forward to get testing.
Yeah, I woke up feeling not the best this morning, just a few flu symptoms.
I was actually at BWS on that particular day, one of the days, so that's why we're here.
And Rob, there are calls to approve a vaccine. How has the PM responded?
Well, the Prime Minister is optimistic but cautious. I don't know that there's any other position he can take, to tell you the truth. Everybody is clamouring for a vaccine, the Prime Minister among them, not only for the health of Australians but also to get this economy moving, to keep people in jobs and to keep employment up and basically prevent the economy from stalling. Having said that, there is the Pfizer vaccine, there is the Oxford vaccine. We're being told it's safe. The Prime Minister says that he welcomes with open arms anything that can be declared safe, but it will not be administered to Australians before an absolute declaration that it is.
Today's news is encouraging. The news in both New South Wales and also in Victoria. Public health is our #1 priority on the vaccine. And there'll be no shortcuts, not cutting corners. If there's no tick, there's no jab.
So, even with a vaccine, we heard yesterday from Dr. Kerry Chant when I actually asked her how long she expected COVID is going to be with us, and she did say 4 years. Angela.
OK, thanks so much, Robert Avadia. There's been border chaos as tens of thousands of Victorian families abandon their holidays in New South Wales to get home before they're shut out at midnight. Laurel Irving is in Melbourne for us. Laurel, they were given very little notice to hit the road.
Oh, very chaotic scenes, as you said, Ange. The government only announced late yesterday afternoon that it would be closing the border to New South Wales, and so we've seen thousands of Victorians who were on holidays in regional New South Wales now scrambling to get home, and that's meant long lines at the border as they're being checked. If they squeaked over the border last night before midnight, they did not have to isolate for 14 days. So we saw even overnight in the early hours of this morning some people queuing up to 5 hours to get home before that cut-off. Anyone who's arrived today will have to isolate for 14 days, but from midnight tonight that border will be closed altogether. Those people will be turned around and not allowed into Victoria. Now, we know it's thrown travel plans into disarray, but we now have an outbreak of 10 cases in Victoria thought to stem from New South Wales, so officials here are unapologetic.
We've been signalling this for a number of weeks, the risks of travel to New South Wales. So we're not providing, an opt-out clause that says, well, if you tried and it was all a bit too hard, here's another go.
Now, we've learned of 2 new cases today. They are Victorians who are linked to the outbreak here. They were on a day trip to New South Wales yesterday when they heard they'd been exposed. They were actually in a testing line when they got the call from our health authorities. So they're now back in Victoria isolating. But everyone who's been to New South Wales or been to an exposure site is being asked to get tested. So that's meant that yesterday and today we've seen every testing site across the state absolutely swamped. People waiting up to 5 hours. Some testing sites have been closed. There are urgent meetings underway now to try to increase capacity. But the message is, please, getting tested is critical. Please be patient. Ange.
OK, thanks so much, Laurel. Now to New Year's Eve celebrations that look very different across the country. In Sydney, the midnight show lit up a near empty harbour. That finale is normally watched by around 1 million people crammed shoulder to shoulder at vantage points, but restrictions meant streets were virtually empty. Brisbane, though, was the opposite. No official fireworks display, but plenty of people packing pubs and clubs.
Plenty of dusty heads in the River City this morning and right across Queensland, really, with our state being one of the few in Australia to be able to celebrate in great numbers and in style. Although many of our major fireworks displays in the southeast were called off, there were still more than 80 shows in Queensland, most of them at family-friendly hours. Disappointingly for the people who went to Brisbane's Bayside, the fireworks were cancelled because the wind got too strong. Nonetheless, out and about, the mood was high, the atmosphere was electric. It almost felt like any other New Year's night. Tens of thousands of people packed into clubs, bars, restaurants, mostly private events, with all of those venues enforcing COVID regulations and caps on numbers. We saw some people attempting social distancing, but as the night went on and the drinks went down, the care factor did too. Paramedics and police were kept busy, but say the behaviour of the crowds was pretty good considering the numbers.
Another great thing to report is no significant injuries to any police overnight.
In Brisbane and on the Gold Coast, more than 70 people were arrested, at least 50 for being public nuisances, and dozens were caught drink driving. Some of those people perhaps already looking for a redo on 2021.
Victoria's latest COVID outbreak has seen the state's quietest New Year celebrations in decades. Crowds were largely well behaved. Arrests down almost 70% on last year. Jade Vincent has more.
The outbreak certainly changed a lot of New Year's Eve celebrations. Many were low-key, keeping police happy with the overall behaviour of revellers, sending off one extremely challenging year. But it also didn't stop everyone from bending the rules. Videos posted on social media at the stroke of midnight show packed nightclubs and dance parties with no sign of masks, despite a 50-person rule and face coverings mandatory indoors from 5 p.m. yesterday. There was no official fireworks display, but illegal fireworks lit up the sky right across the state. Even flares let off on Rye Beach, sending a crowd racing down the foreshore. 2 people were taken to hospital with hand and facial injuries in Lorne after setting off fireworks.
No matter how many times you say it, we just continue to see the injuries. That's the sad bit. They're dangerous.
St Kilda Beach drew a rowdy crowd, but police say they quickly dispersed when officers arrived. 59 revellers were arrested, that number down from 193 arrests last New Year's Eve.
Last night was one of the quietest New Year's Eve celebrations for decades.
Melburnians were certainly conscious of new cases of COVID-19 in the community, and everyone is desperate to leave lockdown behind in 2020.
Global celebrations like here were impacted by the pandemic. New York is the latest major city to welcome 2021. These pictures just into the newsroom. The year there is just a few minutes old. The traditional ball drop playing out in front of just a few frontline workers in Times Square. And while some countries partied like it was 1999, others scaled their celebrations right back.
New Zealand showed the world in 2020 how to stop the virus, and Auckland was the city leading global celebrations. Elsewhere, 2021 couldn't have come fast enough. Tradition took centre stage in Tokyo, while in Thailand and in Taipei, an incredible light and fireworks display. But in Hong Kong, revellers watched the countdown as well as the fireworks and laser display online. On one of the quietest New Year's Eves in living memory, celebrations were measured, even at the world's biggest fireworks display in Dubai. Where there were crowds, masks were on. In North Korea, they were packed in. while there was a party atmosphere in the virus epicentre, Wuhan. In the Swiss capital, there was a sombre memorial for the country's 7,000 coronavirus victims.
Our aim here is to create a room for grief.
London, now dealing with a worrying surge, paid tribute to frontline health workers, while Big Ben chimed to a small crowd at midnight. Elsewhere in Europe, fireworks were replaced with drones in Edinburgh. In Paris, the fire-damaged Notre Dame Cathedral was lit up. Fireworks were banned everywhere in Berlin, but the Brandenburg Gate and Ukraine's celebration was a show of strength. Its president announced no one would be left behind this year and wished everyone a happy and healthy 2021. Hayden Nelson, 7 News.
Sam Brett joins us now with a look at the weather. And Sam, the rain looks like it's sticking around.
It is, and good afternoon. Yes, we aren't going to see any blue skies for at least the next few days. Only light showers, but plenty of them right across eastern parts of the country to welcome in the new year. Now, low pressure trough is what is triggering those showers in southern Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. There is a severe weather warning for New South Wales in that yellow zone, which means we could see heavy rain, damaging winds and even large hailstones in western parts of New South Wales a little bit later on this afternoon. Taking a look now at the current temperatures around the country for the first day of 2021. 28 degrees in Brisbane, around 10 millimetres of rain likely to fall throughout the day, but tapering off towards the evening. 21 degrees for Sydney after a high of 23 and cloudy with a chance of showers later on. Cloudy and 19 for Canberra. A warm 28 degrees right now in Melbourne with a chance of a thunderstorm this evening. Adelaide still very warm, 29 degrees under clear skies. Perth also 29 and mostly sunny. 32 degrees in Darwin with a possible storm later on. And unfortunately, the grey skies are set to continue across the weekend, but I will have your full forecast a little later.
OK, look forward to it. Thanks, Sam. Still to come in the afternoon news on 7, Britain's EU divorce is complete. So what are the new headaches for travellers? People missing the delicate operation to find them in Norway. Plus, a little later, the new parents and how they celebrated New Year's with their firstborn.